Good morning. It is Monday, May 11th, 2026. This is your deep dive daily briefing. I am your anchor, delivering a comprehensive analysis of the pivotal events that have defined the last 24 hours. We begin our broadcast on the world stage, where the strategic landscape of the Middle East has entered a phase of extreme diplomatic sensitivity following the collapse of earlier Islamabad talks. Overnight, the government of Pakistan confirmed it has received a formal response from Tehran regarding the latest United States proposal to end the two-month conflict. This development comes at a moment of maximum tension. While President Donald Trump has recently utilized social media to criticize Iran for what he describes as decades of delay tactics, he has also signaled a willingness to evaluate this latest correspondence. The regional stakes could not be higher as the Strait of Hormuz remains effectively closed to commercial traffic. While the United States naval blockade of Iranian ports continues without interruption, the temporary pause in the Project Freedom maritime escort mission remains in effect to allow this delicate window of back-channel diplomacy to function.
Transitioning from the theater of conflict to the broader global economy, the narrative is being dictated by the International Monetary Fund's somber assessment of a world operating under the persistent shadow of war. In its revised 2026 World Economic Outlook, the IMF has officially cut its global growth projection to 3.1%, citing the structural damage caused by the largest energy supply disruption since the 1970s. This economic drag is particularly acute in the manufacturing sectors of Europe and East Asia, where high input costs and supply chain uncertainties are threatening a stagflationary spiral. The fund warns that the global economy is currently suffering from a state of fiscal dominance, as nations globally ramp up defense spending by an average of 2.7 percentage points of GDP. This shift toward a wartime economic footing is weakening fiscal sustainability and threatening to crowd out essential social spending, leaving a lasting scar on the global recovery that the IMF warns will be slow and uneven.
In the realm of finance, all eyes are on the transition of power at the Federal Reserve as market participants process the implications of a central bank entering a new era of leadership. With the full Senate expected to vote on the nomination of Kevin Warsh early this week, the bond market has remained in a state of watchful tension. Warsh is widely expected to succeed Jerome Powell, whose term concludes on May 15, and institutional investors are bracing for a more hawkish and reform-minded regime. The 10-year United States Treasury yield is currently hovering near 4.3%, reflecting the market's expectation that the incoming leadership will prioritize anchoring inflation expectations over the traditional support of equity markets. This shift occurs as the global debt pool has surpassed $315 trillion, leaving the incoming chair with a daunting task: restoring price stability in a wartime environment while managing the massive expansion of the central bank's balance sheet.
Turning our attention to the technology sector, the focus remains on the massive infrastructure supercycle driven by the critical need for energy-independent artificial intelligence. In a landmark development reported this morning, Nano Nuclear Energy has signed a memorandum of understanding with Supermicro to integrate advanced micro-modular reactors directly into AI data center platforms. This collaboration aims to solve the industry's most pressing constraint in 2026. A surging demand for reliable, high-density power that traditional grids can no longer satisfy. With grid connection delays now stretching up to 9 years in major technological hubs, tech giants are moving toward a vertically integrated model where compute and power become a single solution. By deploying on-site nuclear energy systems, hyperscalers are effectively attempting to decouple the digital future from the vulnerabilities of the global energy market, acknowledging that energy security is now the true frontier of technological leadership.
Finally, we look at the logistics and supply chain networks that serve as the vital arteries of global commerce, which are now finalizing a permanent structural rewiring due to the ongoing crisis in the Strait of Hormuz. Since late February, shipping traffic through this vital corridor has been largely blocked, with over 150 tankers remaining anchored outside to avoid the threat of sea mines and seizure. This de facto blockade has forced the maritime industry to finalize its transition to the Cape of Good Hope as the primary route for Asia to Europe trade. This detour, which adds up to 14 days to standard transit times, is no longer being treated as a temporary workaround but as the new reality for world trade. Logistics professionals warn that the world has moved toward a fractured trade model defined by regional inventory buffers, where the security of supply is prioritized over cost optimization, leading to a sustained period of higher consumer prices and reduced global trade velocity.
In summary, the global landscape is defined by a fragile diplomatic opening in the Middle East that has stalled global growth and left the Federal Reserve on the brink of a hawkish leadership transition. Technological innovation is pivoting toward energy independence to bypass a volatile grid, while the logistics industry has accepted a permanent, high-cost rerouting of world trade. Based on the current trajectory, I predict that the next 72 hours in Islamabad will determine the geopolitical tone for the remainder of 2026. If the response from Tehran leads to a formal summit, we may see a rapid decompression of energy prices. However, the structural shifts in the technology and logistics sectors toward energy independence and regionalized supply chains are now permanent. The world has learned that reliance on singular maritime choke points is a liability that can no longer be ignored, and even a successful peace treaty will not return the global economy to the low-cost, just-in-time models of the previous decade.